With our room-wide gastric bypass session, we are a bit out of the schedule. And the first is Dr. Faisal Siddiqui. Does anyone? Okay, good. Applause for him. He deserves that, and he's going to talk about the preoperative considerations in the room-wide gastric bypass. You have kind of 15 minutes, and we will be kind.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me here, respected colleagues, my senior colleagues and trainees. So the stage has already been set for a controversy, so I'm just going to add some fuel to it, but trust me, these are none of my personal opinions. All these are literature backed, and I hope you guys understand that there's no hard feelings here. So Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, the staple procedure in bariatric surgery, the standard to which everything has been compared and appears that will be compared for times to come because of obvious benefits and as well as a few drawbacks too. So we already know the basic things. So just starting off with the general bariatric criteria, this is based on IFSO and ASMBS guidelines. So the BMI 35 or higher, you do bariatric surgery regardless of any comorbidities. 30 to 34.9 with comorbidities, and these have been adjusted for Asian ethnicity to BMI of 27.5 with comorbidities and 32.5 and higher without comorbidities. So the topic that has been given to me is very extensive and very prone to discussion. So I have been asked to talk about primary indications, which according to literature are GERD, Barrett's esophagus, uncontrolled type 2 diabetes mellitus, severe dyslipidemia, metabolic syndrome, and interestingly sweet eaters. Okay, so this is a kind of a very controversial indication for a bypass, because as we all know that dumping is something very troublesome for these patients, and in patients who are habitual sweet eaters and high calorie liquid consumers, a bypass might be advocated so that the dumping keeps them away from dumping themselves down the drain. And other indications include revisional with the failed sleeve, because sleeve is one of the commonest procedures being done worldwide. So failed sleeve is salvaged by a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. We are going to take all these up one by one and then discuss all these. So this is the STAMPEDE trial, which outlines the role in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Now STAMPEDE stands for surgical treatment and medications potentially eradicate diabetes efficiently. So this was done by Schur et al. In 2017, published in New England Journal of Medicine as a report for three times until the final thing was completed. So what it had 3 limbs. One limb was medication alone, one limb was medications with Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, and one limb was sleeve gastrectomy with medical therapy. So the key findings in this trial were that the long term, in the long term at 5 years, the group with intensive medical therapy plus Roux-en-Y gastric bypass had lower HbA1c levels, required far less diabetic medications including insulin, and significantly higher rate of complete glycemic remission than those managed with intensive therapy alone. So this established Roux-en-Y gastric bypass as a metabolic procedure. This is the trial which made us evolve from bariatric surgeons alone to metabolic surgeons, because now we call ourselves metabolic surgeons, because we are here not just to solve the obesity problem. We are here to resolve the obesity problem along with the comorbidities associated with it, which are always metabolic, usually. So, stepping over, role in GERD. There's this extensive, comprehensive meta-analysis done by Ramdi et al. And it states that Roux-en-Y offers profoundly higher rate of GERD remission compared to other procedures, especially sleeve gastrectomy, with an odds ratio of 3.16 in favor of the bypass. This was a very large meta-analysis. I was thinking about putting it up here, but that would have been very tedious and would have really elaborated on the thing. And again, we were just talking about role in Barrett's esophagus. So we have this a great systematic review by Adil et al. And according to this extensive systematic review, so Roux-en-Y beyond symptomatic control has led to significant resolution of patients in Barrett's who had Barrett's esophagus, and they were offered Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. So it actually helps to ameliorate this condition, which is a pre-malignant condition, as we all know. And then the role in revision. Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, as all of my senior colleagues and my trainees know, that revision, if you're talking about revision, usually you're talking about Roux-en-Y gastric bypass most of the times. So it is a primary surgical salvage. Clinical indications are severe de novo GERD, which develops after having a procedure, aggravated GERD if a patient has been operated in presence of GERD, structural problems like pouch narrowing, twisting at the incisura, that is also an indication. Primary non-responsiveness or secondary weight gain are also indications for revision. So this is what it comes down to as a comparison between sleeve gastrectomy, Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, and one anastomosis gastric bypass. So we are talking about GERD. The GERD, Roux-en-Y gastric bypass is the gold standard treatment for reflux. Metabolic efficacy, sleeve gastrectomy has a high metabolic efficacy. Roux-en-Y gastric bypass has even a higher one, and very high to superior for one anastomosis gastric bypass or MGB. Excess weight loss is best in MGB, and then comes 65 to 75% at 5 years for Roux-en-Y gastric GB. Operative complexity, obviously Roux-en-Y gastric bypass is operatively the more complex procedure, followed by MGB and then by sleeve gastrectomy. Nutritional deficiencies are highest in mini gastric bypass, followed by Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, and lowest in sleeve gastrectomy. Marginal ulcer risk is almost non-existent in sleeve gastrectomy, 1.5% in Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, and 2 to 4% in one anastomosis gastric bypass. And one thing that hasn't been discussed till now is endoscopic biliary access. In patients who require endoscopic biliary access, Roux-en-Y gastric bypass and MGB just finish up that avenue for us. So in sleeve gastrectomy it is preserved, difficult in Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, and also difficult in MGB. So moving on, so just to summarize, and this is debatable, choose RYGB for pre-existing GERD, patients with esophageal hiatal hernia, poorly controlled type 2 diabetes mellitus, sweet eaters, and for revisional surgery. So now we go on to the contraindications. This has been talked about partially. till now. These contraindications stand mostly for most of the bariatric surgery, especially the absolute ones. Uncontrolled active substance use, already discussed by Dr. Faryal, alcohol dependence, untreated major psychiatric disorder, inability to comprehend or comply with lifelong therapy, pregnancy or imminent planned pregnancy within 12 to 18 months of the procedure, and severe uncompensated systemic disease. This is also an absolute contraindication. Patient with ASA 4 or ASA 5 should not be put through this procedure, and some alternate should be devised. So now we come to procedure specific, which are pretty relative contraindications. Patients who have got chronic mandatory NSAID or steroid therapy requirement. Now these patients, if we do a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass in these patients, the risk of marginal ulcer increases exponentially, and the same goes with MGB as well. So in this case, a sleeve is a better option. Patients with Crohn's disease shouldn't go for a lot of cutting in these patients, as we all know. High risk requirement for gastric remnant surveillance. This is patients who've got FAP, who've got hereditary non-polyposis coli, patients in which we need to monitor the gastric remnant. This is also a relative indication, contraindication for it. Advanced cirrhosis, portal hypertension, child's class B and C are relative contraindications for a procedure like Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. Active Helicobacter infection should be treated at least 2 weeks prior to going for a procedure, and then should be checked with a urea breath test to ensure complete eradication. And active nicotine tobacco use should be discontinued at least 4 to 8 weeks prior to undergoing any bariatric surgery procedure, as already pointed out by Dr. Madhya. And then we have technical and anatomical contraindications. A hostile abdomen with severe lesions, short bowel, severe mesenteric shortening, central obesity, all these are technical and anatomical relative contraindications which vary from surgeon to surgeon and according to their expertise. So now I'm sorry to be rushing through things because probably I'm already at the fringe of my time. 3 minutes, yes. So risk stratification strategies, very important in this day and age, and with the evolving litigation scene that we are, all of us are facing. So we're just going to talk quickly about 3 things. One is, this is by Maria et al., DiMaria et al., obesity surgery mortality risk score. It gives 1 point for each of these: age, gender, BMI, hypertension and thromboembolism risk. This is for mortality. Class A is low risk, Class B score 2 to 3, and Class C is score 4 to 5. In Class C, it is always recommended to either go for medical therapy or to stage the procedure to ameliorate the risk. Then we have a morbidity score. This is based on NSQIP, BARS, Bariatric Analysis and Reporting System. 30-day major morbidity is evaluated. We've got key independent predictors in here, like functional dependence, bleeding disorders, and smoking, steroid use, chronic kidney disease or severe systemic disease of any kind. This is Caprini venous thromboembolism risk assessment. All of our patients are at risk. Any obese patient is at risk for DVT. So according to this, in patients with a standard risk, low molecular weight, hospital-based therapy until the patient is in the hospital. For high risk, should be continued for at least 2 weeks post-operatively, and dose should be considered as well. One more risk stratification is internal hernia reoperation technical risk profile. This is also a very controversial thing to talk about. Mesenteric closure risk is something which is documented at 8 to 10% if the defects are not closed. with closure, this comes down to 1%. Now, there have been studies which I haven't quoted here that, once the patient starts having weight loss, even a tight mesenteric closure can give you windows. So it is always an open debate. And second is, in super obese males with thick rigid mesenteries, attempting an anticolic, anti-gastric rule-in can create excessive tension on the gastroduodenal anastomosis. Thank you.